Hey, good morning. Welcome to Leadership Live with Anton Gunn. I want to welcome you to the special presidential edition of Leadership Live. I cannot allow this week to go by without talking about the unprecedented stuff that's happening in the United States of America right now. If you are not aware, and I don't know how you're not aware, our current president of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden, on July 21st, announced that he would step aside and stop his reelection campaign for president. Now, to context this, we are literally 100+ days away from election day. Not a year, not 2 years, not 3 years or 4 years away, but 100 days. And this sudden departure of a presidential candidate who is currently serving as president of the United States has sent the nation into some new dimension that we have never been in. I mean, we've had presidential candidates not seek reelection, but most of them do it in enough time to allow so many other people who want to have that job to compete for it. But never have we had this level of suddenness in a leadership transition in the middle of what is sacrosanct in America, and that is our presidential elections. This time is incredibly disruptive. It is volatile. It is something that we have never seen before in life. Now, this moment is going to bring a whole lot of hysteria to a lot of people, mostly voters, people who just don't know what's next. If you're predisposed one way or the other, you just have no idea what's about to happen. There is no clear pathway to what's next as you think about the elections. Now, this sudden transition is shocking to all of us, me in particular. It is shocking to so many people that this is happening. But I want you to know that this transition, this sudden transition, literally gives us some insight to what many people and corporations deal with every day, what you probably have gone through in recent memory at your company or organization. And let me contextualize it for you like this. We've all heard the news stories of a CEO of a corporation who suddenly resigns for some reason that we're not aware of. Sometimes it's a health scandal or a health scare. Sometimes it could be some kind of scandal, sexual scandal, economic scandal, something where a CEO suddenly resigns. Or it could be someone just retires abruptly, that they decide that they have a health scare of some sort and they come in one day and say, I don't want to do this anymore. And they decide to walk away. Or God forbid, this circumstance happen. You work for a leader that you love and that you admire, who's doing an amazing job. And unfortunately, they pass away abruptly. This can be jarring for you as a leader, for your team, for all the employees in your organization. But I want you to know that most organizations should be thinking about these things on a regular basis. And what do I mean thinking about them on a regular basis? This is the importance of having a succession plan. It's thinking through that if something was to happen to me, can I name 3 people on my team who could do my job as good or better than I can? Are they ready to lead right now? Have they been in meetings with me? Do they know what I know? Have they seen what I've seen? Have they been around me enough to understand the rules of the roles of this job? And if so, if something was to happen to me, I know I have 3 potential successors. Now, that's what I teach to leaders in my keynotes. This is what I teach in my trainings and my executive retreats, even when I'm coaching, that every leader needs to be able to name 3 people that if you were to leave tomorrow for any reason whatsoever, that your organization will be able to continue on and function because there's competent, capable, skilled, and prepared leadership ready to step into your place. But I'm here to tell you, the overwhelming majority of leaders in companies that I work with not only can't name 3 people who could do their job as good or better than them, they can't name 1. They can't name a single person who could step in right now and be ready to lead, be ready to do the job fully. Now, Some of you might be thinking, ready to do the job fully. What does that look like? Well, the technical aspect is what most people want to start with. Do you technically and proficiently know all the things I need to do this job? So if I was using a car analogy, do you know where the gear shift is? Do you have a driver's license? Do you know how to press on the gas? Do you know how to make right turns and left turns? Do you know where your blind spots are? Do you know the technical aspects of how to do the job? That's what we focus on. And the technical aspects are really important to have some cursory or some detailed knowledge about. But here's where I will depart from conventional wisdom about what's important to have in a successor and in a succession plan. Not just the technical skills, but they need to have the people skills. Now, what do I mean the people skills? When you become a senior leader, your job is not about the technical knowledge anymore. Your job is to lead, motivate, inspire, and put a team together who can execute those technical pieces for you. Leadership is more people knowledge than product knowledge. I'm going to repeat that again. Leadership is more people knowledge than it is product knowledge. That's the reason why you see some CEOs, and I'll use one example, Oscar Munoz, who was the CEO of a railway company. And he left the railway company to go become the CEO of United Airlines. So some people say driving a train and running trains on rail tracks in the United States is totally different than flying airplanes across the country and international flights and everything else. Yeah, it is different, but not if you have the people skills. Do you know how to assemble the right team? Do you know how to make sure to evaluate the talent on that team that has the technical expertise? And then can you cajole that team together so that they execute on the vision, mission, and values of the company that you have just taken over? So it's important to know the people skills. So I want you to know that today, what I want to unpack for you is the risk that you are walking into when you have a leadership transition like the one we're having right now in the United States of America. Now, when I say risk, I want to lay out for you, all leadership transitions are not easy, even the ones that got a 5-deep succession plan. Because here's why. Whenever you have a sudden leadership transition, one of those 3 leaders, or let me be clear, all of those 3 leaders think they deserve to be the one, which means it's going to be a power vacuum. In that power vacuum, there's going to be a lot of jockeying in position, a lot of pushing and fighting. If you don't have a clearly laid out succession plan that says this person is the next person up, but if you just have 3 and they all think they deserve the job because you all told them that they deserve the job, there's going to be a fight for it. And the teams beneath them are going to be in all kinds of places. Well, we really want him, or we really want her, or we need to have this person. We need to have this person. Or they might even say, we don't need none of the 3 because the 3 are just like him. So we need to go deeper into the organization, or we need to go outside of the organization. There's going to be a whole lot of noise. That noise is going to drive confusion. That confusion is going to make it hard for you to function and succeed on your core mission. It's going to be incredibly disruptive. And right now, we're experiencing that disruption in real time. But I want you to know the group of people who is most disrupted by this sudden transition of President Biden are the people who work for Joe Biden, the employees. See, every president of the United States has the power to appoint 4,000 appointees in their administration, thereabouts. I was one of 4,000 people who worked for President Barack Obama. 2 different roles, but I was one of those 4,000 appointees. And I was thinking about this circumstance, that if this was 2012 and I'm working for President Barack Obama, I just moved to Washington, D.C. to take over a role in the office of the Secretary at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. And if the president had announced that he was not going to seek reelection against Mitt Romney, that he was going to step down, and there was this massive hole of wondering, would Vice President Joe Biden run, or Does somebody else deserve to be a leader? Does anybody in the cabinet deserve to be, next up the bat? What would that mean for me? What would that do to me? Would I be as fiercely loyal and committed and supported to those other leaders the way I was fiercely loyal and committed and supportive of President Barack Obama? Did I admire those other leaders the same way I admired Barack Obama? All of these questions are running through my head right now because I know this is what those staff members are thinking about. Not just the 4,000 people who work in government for the president, but the some thousand people now who work for his presidential reelection campaign. They're in states like Iowa and Colorado and Texas and Tennessee, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Georgia. There are people who have been working for more than a year and a half preparing to help Joe Biden seek re-election and win the election on November 5th. They've been working for him. They know his words, his ways, his policies, his values. They know all of these things, and they have been working for him. But now they wake up in the morning on Sunday morning, the 21st, to hear the news. And actually, they heard it before that. So let me be clear. We all heard it on the 21st, but the people on his team were definitely given a heads up about this long before the public heard about it. But nonetheless, that didn't change the concern, the fear that they have. So I want to lay out for you very quickly, in a little bit of time that I have left, 6 risks that happen when you have sudden leadership transitions. It's important for you to understand for your company and your business and your organization, because these risks are the same for every organization. It doesn't matter if we're talking presidential politics or elections, or we're talking Bank of America, or we're talking your small business with 200 employees. The same level of risk exists in different ways in all of these organizations. So here's risk number 1, and that is disruption in your operations. See, if you don't have a clear plan or leader that is laid out in a succession plan, you could have disruption in your operations. There won't be team cohesion. There'll be a lack of trust amongst people on the team. People just won't be on the same page because they're not know who's going to be on next. Now, I didn't say this at the beginning, but there's a Game of Thrones element here. Now, I don't know if y'all have watched Game of Thrones. It's a show on HBO, but whenever a king dies, there is games to try to see who can get the crown or who deserves the throne, especially if that king didn't have any sons. And should a daughter be the king? Like, it's all kinds of politics that goes on, even in royal fantasy shows that come on HBO, but in real life. So without a perfect plan or leader laid out, your operations are going to be disrupted because there's going to be a lack of trust, a lack of team cohesion. The people who you might have in an operational role might now have to take on leadership responsibilities and do less work in the operational world. So your operations could slow down. That means you won't produce your widgets as fast enough, or you won't meet the customer's needs as fast enough. You're going to have all kinds of disruption in your operations if you don't have a clear succession plan. That's risk number 1. Now, risk number 2 you're going to have is you have the potential loss of confidence by your stakeholders. Now, when I say stakeholders, your customers, your employees, your vendors, if you're a publicly traded company, your shareholders or investors. If you're a private company and you got investors, those investors. Everybody is going to be questioning, is the value in the product that I used to buy or the service that I used to get, is it going to stay the same now that this leader is gone? I'm not sure if I have confidence in anybody else. I know the CEO's vision. I knew what she believed. I knew her values. But now that she is leaving, I'm concerned about the confidence of this organization. Now, I also want y'all to know this. I just read an article recently that said there were more CEOs who left their jobs so far in 2024 than in previous years, and the majority of them have been women CEOs who've left their jobs. So again, when I say everybody is going through this, these transitions happen regularly. This is the first time we've seen it in presidential politics, but these transitions happen regularly with businesses and organizations. But when it happens, there could be a severe loss of confidence. That's a risk that's going to happen. If you don't have a plan and you don't immediately jump on top of it, people are going to wonder, can you deliver? Can you get my products to me like you used to get them to me? Can you get my services to me on time, the way you said? Can you meet the deadlines that you said? Is this disruption going to hurt so bad that I need to just drop you and hire a new customer? I'm telling you, we've all experienced it. Think about it when we have disruption in our internet service at home. I don't know why we might have the disruption, but it gives us pause about the consistency and the quality of that product. We lose confidence. So some of us might switch and say, you know what, I'm done with AT&T, I'm going to T-Mobile. Or I'm done with Comcast, I'm going to Xfinity. Well, I'm done with both of them, and I'm just going to go cut the cord in general. There's a loss of confidence. That's a big risk when you have a sudden leadership transition. Now, the third thing that can happen, a big risk, is the cultural shock that your employees will have. Some of them are sitting there right now with their mouth open, not believing that this is really happening. Yeah, we heard the rumors. We heard the stories. We heard the cries and the calls. We heard all of that stuff, but I just never thought that he would walk away. I never thought that she would leave. And so the people who work there are sitting there with their heads in their hands and their mouth hanging open because they cannot get over the shock of what just happened. And in the middle of that shock, they're not being productive. They're not fully engaged. They're not listening to anybody right now because they're still processing what the heck just happened. I know this is how it is for the people who are working on the campaign and in the administration. Some of these people are my friends, and they're not returning phone calls. So if they ain't returning phone calls and their job is to return phone calls, that lets me know that they're not being productive. Sometimes these people are doing other things like, what does this mean for me? They're checking on their colleagues and coworkers. They're not being productive. That cultural shock is a big risk when you have a massive transition. Now that brings me to number 4, is that when people are in shock like that, you end up what we call decision-making paralysis. So when I say decision-making paralysis, people are literally asking questions. Hey, I know my job was to print up all of these flyers with the president's name on it. Do I still print this or do I not print it? And if it's going to be President Harris, do I need to redo all of my graphic design work? Or is it going to be somebody else? I don't know. I don't want to make a wrong decision or a bad decision, so I'm just going to do nothing. And that's a lower level person that might have decision paralysis. I mean, think about your company. If somebody leaves, if the COO leaves right now and you're currently in the search for a deputy COO, do you still go through with that hire? Knowing that the COO told you the type of person that they want to fill the role and what skill set they were looking for, but all of a sudden they retire or they leave, or God forbid they passed away? Do you make a decision and still hire that number 2 and bring them into a more disruptive situation because they now don't have a boss? People will freeze and not make decisions. Decision-making paralysis is a risk right now. That's real time for everybody who is working on the presidential reelection campaign, but it's real time for people in corporations every day. All of these things are a risk to your culture. Disruption in operations, lack of confidence, cultural shock, and as I just said, decision-making paralysis. But there's two more risks that I want to lay out. Risk number 5 is the one that you really need to be concerned about, and that is retention of your talent. Just think about this. I mean, I saw it in college sports, and we see this all the time in college sports, is that you recruit a high-level athlete, basketball player, football player, track and field star, it doesn't matter who you are. You recruit some dynamic talent onto your team. And then all of a sudden, the coach gets fired. The coach dies. The coach gets a better job. Is that organization going to keep that talent? Or is that talent saying, look, I only came here for that guy. And now that he's gone, I'm out of here. I'm leaving on the first bird that I can get on to get out of here. I'm transferring. It happens in your companies that people come there because of a leader, someone that they admire, they're inspired by, that they really wanted to work for and really wanted to learn from. And if that leader disappears, your top talented people know that they're commodities, and they know that when they accepted your job, they turned down 2 others. So they can pick up the phone and say, hey, my circumstances have changed here. I'm still open for a new opportunity. And your competition will hire them just like that. So there's a real risk when you have a sudden leadership transition. How do you maintain the talent that you have? How do you keep your talent? How do you retain the top people you brought in? This is happening on the presidential campaign right now. There are people who are top talent who came in because they love and support Joe Biden. And everybody's wondering, are you staying with the campaign? Are you going to still provide this polling data? Are you going to do the research? Are you still going to be the press secretary? Are you still going to do all of those things? Or are you going to leave? And I will tell you, there are some people that's going to leave. The question is it 10%? Is it 30%? Or is it 50% that's going to leave? But somebody is going to leave because this is not what they signed up for. Your company is no different. People are going to leave because this is not what they signed up for when you have a big leadership transition. So I want you to be aware of that one, retaining your top talent. Now, here's the last one, and I'm going to close, but I'm going to tell you what my thoughts are about some of the things that are going on, because I know you're asking and wondering. I see your comments and messages. Let me just be clear. This is not a political discussion today, but I'm going to just talk operationally. This is what I call my organizational ethnologist hat. I'm not even talking about the people or the process involved. I'm just talking about the structure of what happens when you have sudden leadership transitions. And here's the 6th one. The risk is you could have a strategic drift. Now, when I mean strategic drift, that you could drift away from your vision, your values, your goals and objectives in this lack of transition, especially when you have a strong, charismatic, inspirational, motivational type leader that everybody loves, and that person is gone, and you see that there's a team that is on the number 2 level who is not as strategic, as charismatic, motivational as they are, and so they don't inspire you the way that you were inspired before, so you pay less attention to the details. You start to drift a little bit. Or maybe you say, I'm going to keep doing what the previous leader would want me to do. So you think that you are going in the right direction, but you're starting to drift. The whole organization is starting to drift because they lost the leader. Now, let me give you one corporate example of this. This is a real corporate example. When Bill Gates made the decision to step away from Microsoft, everybody knew the type of leader he was, how he set the company up, his structure, his focus, his goals. He was like Darth Vader. Now, not when I say Darth Vader, he was about building an empire that controlled the world of personal computing. He wanted to crush the competition. He wanted Microsoft machines on everybody's desk, in everybody's house, in everybody's office, period. No Dells, no, Hewlett Packard, only Microsoft machines in your house. That was his style. But when he stepped away, Steve Ballmer came in, and he was definitely a different type of CEO. If you don't know, you should go watch some video of Steve Ballmer when he took over Microsoft. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing his last name right, but I know Manic Steve is what I heard somebody refer to him as. He was wide open, hyped up, a little quirky and weird, but he was hyped up. I still think he wanted to crush all the competition, but Bill Gates was an introvert, soft-spoken, direct, no hype, no screaming, no yelling, but that next leader was a little bit different. And what did we see? We started to see a strategic drift at Microsoft. So much so that when Ballmer left and they hired Satya Nadella, they had to reset Microsoft, had to change their approach, become a more empathetic company, because they had drifted away from what made them great, that made them the biggest, baddest tech company on the planet. And they got overtaken by some others, Apple being one of them. So strategic drift is real in all organizations, and it's a real risk right now with the presidential election in the Democratic Party, a real risk. So this is why it's important to have these three things to mitigate these risks. These are three things that you should have to mitigate these risks and what you should be building into your organization. And if you're an HR executive, you better be on every leader in your company to be doing the following things. Number one, having a succession plan. It is non-negotiable to have a succession plan. It should be non-negotiable. You should be able to say, okay, if I'm gone, here are the three people who could do my job better than me, and they're prepared to do it right now. And if they're not prepared today, that's okay. But you need to give them a development plan so they can get ready, because you're not planning to go anywhere. Your CEO is not planning to go anywhere. So they got time to get ready. And really, most people, they need 3 years to get ready, at max 3 years. They don't need 5. They don't need 10. There's some people in your organization who you should be looking in the deep inside of your organization to be able to find 3 people that you could put them on a development plan that in 3 years, they'd be ready to execute as the senior leader, whatever that role might be. Not just CEO, but this is for any level in any organization. Have a succession plan. Number 2, you want to make sure that you have good and effective communications, letting people know what's next. Now that I'm gone, here's what's going to happen. Now that I'm gone, here's what I'm going to do. Now that I'm gone, this is the next step. Now that I'm gone or leaving, this is what I want you to do. You got to have clear communications. You got to minimize the fear of the unknown, because these 6 risks show up when there's unknown. When you don't know, you'll have a disruption in operations. When you don't know, you'll lose confidence. When you don't know, people will stay stuck in cultural shock rather than, okay, I'm snapping out of it, I'm getting back to work. When you don't know, people will be paralyzed in their decision-making. When you don't know, people will say, well, I don't know if I'm going to have a place here, so I'm jumping ship. This is real. So you got to have clear communications around what's next. And don't let a lot of time lapse between the sudden transition and what's next. You can't let weeks and months go by, because confused people make their own decisions. Some of them do nothing, but some of them make their own decisions. They will find their own path, and they won't believe anything that you say because you took too long to say it. So you must be trying to hide something because it took forever for you to say something. There must be something sneaky and dirty and going on here because this transition happened and y'all didn't say a single word. So you got to have good, clear communications. And the third thing that you got to stay focused on to minimize these risks is you got to keep people focused and refocus on the culture. regardless of the leader of the organization, this is who we are. This is our values. This is what we believe. And I'm confident that no matter what happens, we're going to maintain our values. We're going to maintain our beliefs. We're going to keep delivering for our people the way we've been delivering. We're going to serve our customers the way we've been serving our customers. We're going to have the same impact. And it's kind of like the mentality that one monkey don't stop no show. Unless it's the main monkey. That's what a colleague of mine, a chief HR officer, I love him to death. We would have this back and forth about me saying that one monkey don't stop no show. And this is a, euphemism for if you see a monkey show, there's got to be multiple monkeys. But if one monkey falls out, it doesn't stop the show. And he would always say, it's the main monkey. If the main monkey leaves, that will stop the show. It only stops the show if you don't have a clear succession plan, if you don't have good communications, and you lose focus on your culture. So you got to keep people focused on the culture. Focus on what brought you to this point, what brought you to this level. So there you have it. That's how I would say you can prepare for a leadership transition, is to know these risks. Number one, disruption in operations. Number two, loss of confidence. Number three, the cultural shock of the disruption. Number four, decision-making paralysis. Number five, talent retention, the challenge of talent retention, retaining your top talent. And number six, strategic drift. Know those risks, but know what you should do about it. Have a succession plan. Number one. Number two, make sure you communicate clearly, often, and in great detail about what's about to happen next. And keep people focused on the culture that is bigger than a leader. And so I'm happy to say that as the taping of this episode here, that those three things have happened in the president's departure. That number one, he didn't say he was stepping away from the presidency. He said he was stepping away from the campaign. He will focus on his duties serving as president. But number two, he also endorsed and supported his vice president, who has been preparing for the job for 4 years. Remember, I said it only takes 3 years to get a leader prepared. But it's been 4 years that she's been the number two in his organization, the clear succession. And it's not even that he had to decide the succession plan, that our Constitution lays out. If we don't have a president, the vice president is next. If we don't have the vice president is next, then we have, the president of the Senate or the Speaker of the House. I'm confused right now because I'm not focused on the politics of government. But I want you to know that our nation has a clear succession plan that literally goes 14 people deep. That's, kind of in the Constitution. So go read that if you want me to get it exactly right. Maybe I'll read it before I do this again. But my main point is, from a government standpoint, we got a clear 12 deep succession plan. Now, I would question if all of those people are ready from day one, but they know the job for sure. I think they're all good with people because they're in elected office, and you can't get to elected office without being good with people in some way, shape, or form. But on the campaign side, it's less clear about what the succession plan would have been, because normally when a candidate suspends their campaign or if a candidate passes away while running for office, the campaign is over. It's usually over. But the clarity that President Biden laid out that he's not running again, but his vice president is a clear sign that this is a number two who's ready to become number one. They've communicated about that incessantly in the 24 hours. They didn't even let 24 hours go by without communicating what's next. So for all of those staff members, all of those team members who were working hard for President Biden, they were technically also working hard for Vice President Harris as well, because the ticket came together. It's two of them together. But now that President Biden is gone, those people are signaling their clear commitment and confidence to Vice President Harris, which is a strong sign. But I still think there's some cultural shock. There is some disruption in operations. Like, do you got to reprint all of the buttons over again? You got to change all of the signs. I know you got to shoot new commercials because the commercials can't be about President Biden no more because he's not running. You got to be about the vice president. So there's going to be some disruption in operations with a very short window to turn it around. So this is going to be tough. But clearly, in my opinion, they put all of the tools in place to give people confidence to minimize these risks of this sudden leadership transition. They have a succession plan. They have clearly communicated. And now the job is to focus everybody on the team and all of the stakeholders like us, you and I, the voters, the people, the public, the people who are out here doing our jobs every day, living our lives. How do they keep us focused to show us that the culture of this leadership team and this organization that we've seen over the last 4 years will continue? And that's what we want. So I'm excited about watching this all unfold. It's providing some valuable lessons for you and me as leaders in organizations. If you want to maintain your great culture, you got to prepare for sudden leadership transitions. If you want to build a world-class organization, you got to have more than one leader that everybody admires. It just can't be one. You got to build a framework for all leaders in that organization to be people that everybody will admire. So you got to be ready for prime time. And these lessons are brought to you by President Joe Biden and his sudden transition from being the candidate and the nominee for the Democratic Party. So I went a little long today because I think it's important to unpack this. And I'm going to come back next week and talk a little bit more about what your employees are worrying about and how you shore things up in leadership transitions, sudden leadership transitions, unexpected leadership transitions, surprise leadership transitions in your organization. So I want to thank you for watching Leadership Live. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. And I hope you continue to pay attention to how you can build a world-class culture full of leaders that everybody will admire. Y'all take care and see you next.